And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Here with your sensei Bob, this guy right here to tell you stories. So you need a little nudge, you know. I was just, you know, I'm not like most um, bloggers, you know. I don't have a staff. I have other people. I just kind of hit go live and type of chat. Live chat is what I'm looking for. Have you guys take part of this? It works best when you do. When you jump in and we talk and you ask questions and I tell you a story. And I don't know if you've noticed, but things are pretty strange. Not that this earth hasn't been strange every second, minute, moment of the day, of every year, of every century, every eon. Because we always are living in the moment. This moment right here, right now. That's all we got. The past is the past. Future ain't here yet. We're just right here, right? And anybody who goes on and on and on about the past, other than telling you a story that kind of defines or exemplifies or gives a kind of potential for understanding of the things around you, right? And that's the stories I tell. I try to uh, give you a point of reference to your life, right? And that's why when I'm telling a story, it's not like you're, beginning, middle, end, proper grammar, well spelled words. No, I weave a tapestry, right? And that is a shamanic tale, right? That's what a griot tells, right? A story that you need to hear, right? So I don't know if anyone can realize that the weather has not quite been what it usually is around this time, right? Or around wherever you live. It's kind of outside the peripherals of what it is. Like this hurricane that just came in out of the Caribbean, kind of whacked all those poor little islands that I used to live on. With a class 5 hurricane that they haven't seen. It was June when this was coming. It started down the bowling alley before. I think the first um, day of the hurricane season is like the end of June or the beginning of July or July 11th or something like that. And here it's not even a July 11th yet, and we're experiencing this storm, and it's like whang down to the Caribbean, hit all those islands, ran into the Yucatan of Mexico, cut across the Gulf of Mexico into Texas. Amazing storm surge in Houston, messed that place up, Galveston, and then kind of went up into the state, rained a lot, flooded, messed that up, and then kind of went east and still doing its thing. I mean, there are tornadoes in upstate New York right now, right? So this ain't your usual thing, and it's gonna wind its way over there towards New York City, and that everything from Maryland up through Long Island into Connecticut and Massachusetts. It's gonna and Vermont gonna be a mess, right? And that's just the first one. We're supposed to have like 25 of these. So, you know, I think in Texas, about 5 million people still without electricity, and it's like 110 degrees, and so ooh, it's a little uncomfortable there. Your house, that beautiful, multi-million-dollar Texas house that was, just gorgeous architect, right? And of course, you have air conditioning and a heat pump, so why would you be needing your windows to open? Because you want it like really sealed tight so you're energy efficient. Good idea. That thing's going to be so hot. And before the juice goes back on, your walls will be covered in black mold. So, and then we have this little kerfuffle going on um, in Ukraine. Russia was trying to take Ukraine, and it's bombing the crap out of kids' hospitals. When you launch a cruise missile, it's controlled by either onboard memory of where it's going, or global positioning satellites. Now the Ukrainians have really taken out Russia's, you know, because Russia didn't have a lot of stations all over the world like we do. We have 900 military bases all over the world. Russia really doesn't have any, a few here and there, but not really. They don't really have the kind of satellite global positioning motif, right? So, and the Ukrainians have taken out a few of their nodes. So they're, so that's why they're getting all these Patriots, which for every missile they shoot to take out, like, one of the Iranian cruise missiles, or drones, or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, that costs about, $15,000. That Patriot costs about, $3 million. So Lockheed and Grumman Aerospace and the guys who really love this war. They are making a mint, and we're going to turn Ukraine to the last Ukrainian, right? And so last summer, when they had a lot of artillery and they were keeping the Russians at bay, the American Defense Department was saying, that the Ukrainians are like, they don't want their soldiers to die, so they're overusing the artillery that we've been giving them. And so, oops, the Congress just happened to take 6 months to give them another drought. But Israel needs another thousand, 3,000 ton bombs. Hey, no problem. So, if you haven't noticed, and you don't hear it on any other media, no alternative media, you don't, I lined up a whole bunch of things on my phone, and it's just the same old same. Do I want to waste my time playing them for you guys? I mean, they're all okay. Jimmy Dore is pretty cool. There's this woman who I kind of know. She's an interesting global analyst, and back in 2015, a buddy of hers came to Roanoke. These two ladies from Ukraine came, and they basically, I was running this. I was the outreach director for the First Christian Church, right? And so I was running all their community activities and not getting paid a nickel. Whereas the guy who they brought in, because their church was dying, there was only 11 old people left, and this was a really old church, like 120 years old. Really beautiful church too, and had a school, but they were doing nothing with it. And they had a gigantic dining room and kitchen down below, right? So I started the No Fear Cafe, and it was right across the street from the city police, right next to the courthouse, right next to the city administration building where the mayor is, and right next to Channel 10, and right across the street from the um, Roanoke Citizen Times. But there were no restaurants within 10 blocks of that, right? They had to go down to the market. Well, we opened that up. I went out there, I Xeroxed a bunch of flyers. I went out in every office. I went one day, all day long, just handing out to every cop, every, administrator, every bureaucrat, every TV guy, every newspaper guy. And within a week, we were making $1,500 a day, right? And I set it up because I met these two old Jamaican ladies, right? And they just loved cooking, and they wanted to have a restaurant. And they had no money, and their son-in-law took what little money. He said, I'll go get the licenses. I'll find a building for you, blah, blah. He took the money and ran. And so they were like boo-hoo-hooing. I said, no, no, no problem. Aren't you ladies ready to work? And they said, oh, yes, we love to do it. I said, no problem, because this church, had a food bank, and so and I was tight with the Salvation Army. They had a real big food bank, right? And so I just, went over there, ladies. We stock up on canned goods and vegetables, enough to, like, and they gave a whole bunch of frozen chicken and frozen fish, and that was enough for the first week. And the first week they made $11,000 because it was a church, tax free. And the No Fear Cafe, how it worked was it was strictly by donation. You didn't have any money, we're going to feed you. Don't have to worry about it. But if you walk in, Judge, let's open up that wallet. Oh, look at that Benjamin. And I was the maitre d'. I put a little piece of scotch tape, black electric tape on my thing. And I looked like, and I had a towel over my thing, and I had the tray. And I was, hello, and they had these big tables, 10 people to a table. And I'd have a judge, a few lawyers, a couple, because the new hospital was just nearby. And so some nurses, some doctors, some TV guys, some bureaucrats from the city, and homeless people. And I made sure every table had a few of everybody, right? Policemen, and I would start the conversation and get everyone talking. Who are you? Let's go around the room, because before and they would bring these great little pasties, right? And lemonade, water with like lemonade, but now sugar, right? Thing in plastic cups. And they, basically had the same, you could have fish or chicken, vegetables, right? And pulled pork, pulled chicken, pulled pork, fish, vegetables, right? And so basically, the woman would say, "Okay, who wants chicken? Who wants fish? Who wants pork?" And then it was served. Everyone got a plate of what they wanted with all the stuff. And but they would first give you these little pasty things, so you could right away have something to eat and this really great kind of lemonade. And so that was how it worked. And so I'd sit, 10 people to a table, made sure judge, lawyers, nurses, doctors, policemen, TV guys, at least four homeless guys, right? And I would come, after the meeting, I would get the conversation going. Let's go around and say who we are, right? They do that and what their story was, and then once I started that and the posses came, I'd grab one, I'd go and get more people in and put them at a table, do the same thing. And the first day we had 300 people, right? Like I said, we made over $1,000. And every day we made more, and it was like unbelievably popular, right? And I gave a cut to the church, but most of it went to the ladies. And I said, listen, this is run by 20 white um, prejudiced people. And they hired this white guy who's a grifter, and he's running his nonprofit out of it, doing a grift. And what that guy did was he brought college kids in and he gave them a community experience, which was basically staying on the floor either at the Salvation Army or at this other church or at this. And he would get the city to give him a building in the really crappy neighborhood, the hood, and he would have those kids ripping it apart. So they're huffing fiberglass and asbestos, and no hard hats, no goggles, no gloves. Getting the nails through the thumb, all the rest, right? And you signed it, and all these were coming from liberal arts schools where they wanted to give their kids an experience of social activity, right? And anyway, so when he got because he's really good looking, really, he's like all those old people. He's white. All those old people would say, "Oh, well, he'd make a great minister." He had no theology training. He had no religious training. He was just a grifter, right? And so he's what I used to call folks in Roanoke, the usual suspects. There was this crew of liberal, political active people. And it didn't do squat. There were a handful of people who really did, like Sweet Polly, amazing. She would do Earth Day every year, and the Plowshare guys were a bunch of jackoffs, and give her a hard time all the time. And there was a guy named Pete who single-handedly restored this neighborhood called Grandin that was just a bunch of heroin addicts and prostitutes. The Grandin movie theater, it was segregated, so the black people went upstairs. So all the trannies would be up there giving ministers blowjobs. So it was, and that's Roanoke. It's like, and me being the social scientist, I try to enamor a change in everything. I'm a strategist, and so Pete, I helped Pete retake Grandin. We had the Grandin Gardens, and he had been a professional football player. Had worked for IBM. He was like a touched guy, and so he had some cash. So he bought two of these beautiful buildings that had been part of a southern plantation back in the day. These two beautiful southern buildings built by slaves, and he bought them. He didn't quite realize that was that, and so because he was always thinking about the sustainability, blah blah blah, which is an oxymoron. All these colleges have departments for like App State, right? They have a sustainability department, right? And Boone used to be the most beautiful little mountain town. It was just the omnipresent. In 1969, I was there, and it was I was studying education for not who it was. It'll pop into my mind. But anyway, a nonprofit, a large nonprofit, Brookings. I was with Brookings, and in those 30 years, it was great in that I was sent around the country studying stuff for people like Brookings and CFR and Trilateral Commission and a whole bunch of entities of that matter. Um, and there's a guy who wrote a book called Hitman for the large corporations. I forgot what that was. So where are you guys? Is anybody there? Not really. So anyway, um, so I didn't go into the foreign lands. I just was studying America, and I had gone to the foreign lands as a anthropologist. And then later, when I was working in universities like Cornell and UNC and Duke and what other schools? A few others. And I would go study weirdness, right? And then I got to be part of the Tavistock Institute. I worked for an entity called the BBI, and we would look at stuff that was too scary for most people. And see, that's the whole story. That everything you think is scary, anything Stephen King can think up, weirder shit than that is happening all around you, right? And that's why I live in this place. This is like, Bigfoot comes and rearranges my styrofoam cups on my deck, at least once a week, just to have giggles, right? And kind of pecks at my. Soon as the sun comes up, he's like doing Morse code on my window. I look out the window, nobody there, and I put my head down and go, tick, 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 right? And all the animals are right on my little green. They've all run away from the surroundings around here because they're ripping and tearing all the forests to put big, expensive houses on the lakes. And this place is so sensitive that instead of taking, like Asheville, instead of taking, 100 years to, become an environmental. When I was there between 91 and 98, it was amazing. There was nobody there, right? And except for interesting artists and a couple of guys like Julian Price, who was trying to save the place, right? And because he was, he had a million, billions, not billions, but lots of money. He was a child of the um, of the robber baron crew, right? Like the Rockefellers or the you know Biltmores. He wasn't one of them, but he was like his family. I don't know whether they were the cigarette people or I don't know where his family made their stole their money from. And so, but he this young girl, he was probably in his late 60s, and he was in pretty good health. And I was his documenter. I was, when I met him, he goes, "What are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist. He said, "That's what I need." So he was great. We started a media center, which is great. He bought a bunch of buildings. Really, he bought the greatest, biggest, oldest buildings to save the architecture, right? So they wouldn't turn them down. Like what they did to Ithaca. Ithaca was a beautiful. First time I saw Ithaca in the '60s, it was a beautiful town. When I went back in '88, they ripped apart the freaking um, Main Street and turned it into a ghost town by making it a mall. Anyway, so and they made it a mall like between '79 and '86, and that's when the savings and loan debacle happened. Anyway, I don't know what it is now. It's a hipster town. I told a lot of people about it, and they went there. All my alternative healing friends went there, and but again, I was there, between '88 and '91. Um, and it was a great town. There was nobody there. Cornell was there, great school. That's where I worked. Cornell, Ithaca College, a really nice liberal arts school. And there was a real firmament of inquiring minds, right? And there was a number of, there's a place called Wisdom's Goldenrod out near Seneca Lake. And out near Seneca Lake is where the women's movement started before the Civil War. And they knew the Civil War was coming, and these were women of means, except women in America were treated like slaves, whether they were rich or poor. There were rich women who got married off to other rich families, and she would have all the money, but her husband would have authority over it, right? So America has been a screwed up place from the beginning, and now when the not Democrats, but demographics are changing, and it used to be a white country killing Indians, right, and having slaves, right. Well, they couldn't kill all the Indians, so they didn't. So the Indians are still here with a spiritual power that can't be beat, and they will outlive the white people, right. And so demographically, white people aren't having kids, right. And so uh, America's economic base was always based on immigration. And when they were gonna build the Statue of Liberty, the first Statue of Liberty was a black woman with chains on her hands, right? And the Statue of Liberty was being built in France to celebrate the end of slavery and slash the Civil War. But you know, then money and power got involved, and we got the Statue of Liberty that we got. But if you go up close you go to the island as you're coming on the ferry, you look to see where to look. Statue of Liberty is wearing like a big cloak, right? And if you see where her hands are, and she's holding this book, like either the Ten Commandments or the Declaration of Independence. If you look at that arm, the bracelets of the chains are still there because they had them put on, so they just put a cloak over them. Anyway, so we have been moving, slowly towards salvation. And the rich, the handful of oligarchs that have always ruled. Our founding fathers weren't Christian. These morons, we have to go back to being a Christian country. We never were. What is the First Amendment? Whenever people say that, you know what the First Amendment is? Yeah, freedom. I said, no, do you know what it says? Freedom. I can say whatever I want about we're a Christian country. I said, no, buddy. The First Amendment states, I quote, the government slash the legislature will not, under any circumstance, have a state-run religion, and there will be a separation of church and state, so the individual can, have their own religion. They don't have to have, they don't have to be Muslim or Jewish or Catholic or Protestant or Baptist. They can be any one of those and a whole bunch more. You want to be a orange a pogo stick with yellow stripes, and that's your religion. That's fine. I mean, I know a bunch of religions like that, right? In America, like the Baptists, the Southern Baptists, right? They have 60,000 sects just in the Southern Baptists. There's a whole other bunch of other Baptists, but just in the Southern Baptists, there's 60,000 sects, meaning different religions of baptism, Baptists, Southern Baptists. And so all these people who are talking like God's talking straight to them, they're not, all they do is quote the Bible. They don't understand it. They don't like the Old Testament. You know, the Old Testament is the Torah, right? But in the Hebrew tribes, there wasn't just the Torah, there was the Tala, and there was also the more esoteric Kabbalah, right? And every religion has that. The Roman Catholics have that. They have the stuff for the general public, then the like stuff for the ceremonies, and then the esoteric stuff that no one except the more important hidden folk get to see. And that's what it is. And if you don't understand that, if you don't experience that Trinity, they're talking about the Trinity in Christianity, right? That's the Trinity. And those three different texts basically um, make the big story, right? So, let's see. Let's try and not drop the laptop here. Uh, Maybe I'll put it over on this here. Ooh, look at that. Look at that flesh. Woo, woo, woo. Uh, it's the time of day when the mosquitoes quite aren't out. There's a little breeze, enough to keep them at bay. Uh, so earlier this morning, I was at this place. I had breakfast. They have pretty good breakfast, but they can never get it right. I ordered pancakes. There's three pancakes, sausage. You have a choice between patties and links, and they always bring the wrong ones. I always ask for butter. They never bring butter. I asked for eggs over easy. They scramble them. I asked it for eggs over, um, medium, and they gave me hard boiled. I mean, it's like what? I mean, they were good, and they have really great grits. So that's one thing they kept, and they got a pretty big bowl of it too. So, and you need butter for grits. These I don't understand. I really don't. There, and they have pretty good coffee. It's expensive, but they give $2 for a cup of coffee. But you can have as many cups as you want. And see, most people just drink one cup. They're not like me. I drank five. And so if that show comes up, I will. I've been looking for it because I did it on my phone. I didn't do it on the laptop. And there was this guy in there who all I do is math and the Bible. And this guy was obviously unbelievably brilliant, right? Because he's sitting. I said, "Why don't you join me?" And said, "No, no, no. I don't get close to people." So he sat at the other end and screamed at me the whole time, right? And it's all I do is read the Bible. And he does. He knew the Bible and he talked it, not like quoting it, but about it. It was pretty amazing. And he said everything is, it was all about derivatives, right? So I think he kind of worked in banking, but he was like, whoa. So if that, I've been looking for it on this thing. It hasn't, went in there because every time I do this on my phone, I have to go back and put it into public. It won't let me do public. Anyway, I mean, I'm sure it does let you do it, but I have no idea how to do it. But on my laptop here, I can do it. And what is Bay City saying here? Yep. Always good to see you, Bay City. I'm out here in the deep green at my neighbors. It looks like, a tree fell on their house back in the winter, back in February or March, and they're still, uh, nice legs. And I can dance, even though I can't walk. I can dance. Uh, 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 uh. So anyway, so let's see. There, no, it's not there yet. Yeah. So most people don't understand that the whole thing, everything in politics. I'm from the George Carlin School of Politics. I came. George Carlin and I kind of grew up in the same neighborhood up there in Harlem, over where the Irish and where all the Europeans were, right? But we all kind of went to the same school that was near um, Columbia, right? Which and they had right on that street where Columbia is and Barnard is. They had four different theology schools, and Kaufman's um, Riverside, cathedral was there. When that guy was totally for the people. He was not about the Benjamins, not like my godfather, Cardinal Cushing. And he wanted me to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. That's why I got sent to the seminary, and half the people in NASA are Nazi Catholic priests because it's a lot easier to hide a Nazi under a cassock with a collar. It kind of hides all the you know tattoos. And you think you know the tweakers have a lot of tattoos. Boy, Nazis have a lot of tattoos. Uh, let's see. I just want to say it's nice that you talked to Jan. Yeah, the way you do it. Glad that he has you as a friend. See, I never give up on friends. Now, I don't put myself in harm's way. I mean, John threw me out of the school 32 times. Now, after the third time, first time he did it, was like 5 in the morning. He held a hammer in his hand. Get out! Get out! Kind of threatening, but I didn't let it bother me. Uh, so I had no idea where to go, and he wouldn't let me take my stuff. So when I came back, my birth certificate was gone. All the pictures of me getting married were gone. All the stuff about my life was gone. All the stuff that Dragon sent me. Dragon was somebody who was on this show early on, and I think John did something so he can't ever. Dragon gets a hold of me, and anyone can at the Dudawake42 at Gmail, Dudawake42 at Gmail. And this guy, Dragon, he used to send me these little care packages with bottles of wine and all kinds of cute little things. And he would take all of my shows and put them on thumb drives because he was scared that one day YouTube would just bot me off and all of this would go away. Now I tell you guys, you should start documenting this like he did. And John took them all because who else? I he threw me out, but I couldn't, just get out. And so I was barely getting out of there with my medicines, and I drove out of there, and going, where am I going to go? And it was just John had just arrived. He had gotten himself a mail order bride from Russia, and she showed up, and she had this unbelievable fur coat with a hood and sexy thing, right? And she'd been on the airplane for like 38 hours. John picks her up in DC at Dulles or Reagan or whatever it is. And, can we get something to eat? And he said, no, no, no. And I had gone and fixed a stuffed turkey with a chicken inside and a pheasant inside that, right? and all these vegetables. And I went and got blintzes and all kinds of Russian stuff. And I had a big pot of Russian tea. And so when she and I had bottles of wine, and I got a really great bunch of Russian or at least Ukraine kind of pastries because in Roanoke there were a couple of there were Roanoke had a little bit of everybody in it. It was pretty amazing. It was like the microcosm of the world. So anyway, so she shows up, and I have this meal ready, and I have the table downstairs with a tablecloth and candles, and the fire and a fireplace, and and the smells were like amazing. And John was, and he ran upstairs, and I just brought out the food, and she scoffed it like, she picked up the whole, she was a Russian girl, and really good looking too. And then John came down like, asshole, asshole. I said, John, calm down. Here, have a glass of wine. And he got a little, relaxed, and he ate a little bit. Well, this is good. I mean, I must have made John 3,000 meals, and every time you didn't poison it, did you? And then after he finished, he'd go, boy, that was really good. And then he'd go upstairs and eat 2 or 3 loaves of Wonder Bread in olive oil. I mean, just so, and, before she came, so we probably had, he bought the place in 2015, yes, around, oh, maybe October. So October, November, December, I was there. He was there. We were like working on the place. He got he's going, I work so hard. I work so hard. No. His father's construction guys would come up there, like Mr. Mike would come up there. Mr. Mike was great. He couldn't take John. So and so John would run through people, right? And I would get him to stick around to finish the freaking job, right? And so anyway, so that's why he had me there because I could interact with the people, and the school was getting better and better. And I wanted John to do it because the Hill seemed. I mean, John was the only one that Hill let buy the place. I had other people buy it, and John. I knew that John. Mr. Mike was great. In those 3 months, he fixed all the things that the house was about to fall down. There were about 4 things things wrong with the roof, structurally outside, or things that were wrong. And there were these big patios made out of concrete. And, George and Mishka were not the smartest. I mean, they were, I'm brilliant. I'm the smartest. Now Inga, she was brilliant and the smartest and the greatest artist. Those guys were like, and I mean, Mishka, he got born in Nazi Germany. Inga was in a ditch in Germany, her legs spread, and a Nazi doctor, even Nazis are empathetic, was trying to deliver Mishka while the U.S. Air Force was strafing them because they were in a ditch that the U.S. Air Force, just like the IDF says, if you're there, you're part of the enemy. So Inga is like basically naked in the middle of winter, legs spread, and this doctor's trying to pull a baby out of it, and a U.S. F whatever Thunderbolt was right. So there's understanding why Mishka is the way he is, right? When he does, he stays with the guy who owns the place, and I called that guy up to see how I was doing, and Mishka was there. And Mishka has issues about everything, right? I try to help him out, but so if you go back and to all the shows I have, there's one of Mishka who's screaming at me, right? He's got a bald head and he's got a German accent, and he's going, and he's not a psychiatrist, he's not a psychologist, he's not even trained. He went to a cult and learned about cultness, and now he considers himself a shrink in Germany. And so anyway, so he was like, you should watch that show. It's way back toward the beginning. Like it's maybe show 40 or 50 or 60. It was like, and it's hilarious. It's unbelievable, and it totally. If you want to see about 10 different, in psychotherapy, they want to put you in a box, right? They want to put you in jail, basically. But when I practiced it, and that's what I was doing, I was practicing it. That's what it is. They call it medical people do a practice. That's what I was doing. I was practicing, and I was working for the VA. I had all these guinea pigs to practice on, but I did a pretty good job. And then from that, I studied certain dynamics again through Brookings and other folks like that. Because I was working for this thing, BBI, which is Bureau of Behavioral Investigation, and that's where I learned how to really read people well. And I don't even know if it exists anymore because those things change their name all the time. Because you can find out stuff that the federal government does through FOIA, Freedom of Information, right? But if it's owned by a corporation or nonprofit, they don't have proprietorial rights. So most of all the UFO, extraordinary technology, all of that stuff is owned by corporations. So you never hear a word about it. Right? On John's page where and watch these. No, no, no. They're all of this stuff is on my channel. Just go, Dreamy Dreamland. I got like almost 2,000 shows. You know, I mean, on John's channel, I probably only have maybe 17 shows because what would happen is I like the when I told the story about the old crone, right? I was sitting there in shorts. And I had a black shirt and black shorts, and I was sitting over in the corner, and John was there. And people just tell him to shut the fuck up because I was telling the story. He would interrupt, and go on because he wanted it to be about him. And that first show got, most of the shows get, I don't know, somewhere between 40 and 200 people watch a show, and I don't even know if that people do watch it or he has 40 to 200 bots that watch it, so we can go on there say that that many people are watching. I have no idea, but he's been doing YouTube since it came out, and me, I started, maybe 7 years ago, give or take, and so it's obvious that I am, they're trying to keep me down on the farm. They don't bother me. They let me talk about whatever the heck I want to talk about, not a problem there. But, somewhere between 10 and 50 people watch a show, off the start. And then maybe a lot of people in different parts of the world watch the show at different times, right? And so there are a lot of people who are in Europe and Asia and South America who watch, like when I'm asleep. Now, when I was at John's, you know, so this guy, John went away to see his kids and he ended up in the Looney Tunes. And so he was gone for about 3 weeks. So I took care of his cats and the place. And this guy came by. He's desperate for a place. And so I needed some money for medical, So I said, sure, you can move in. And so the guy came in and he just cleaned up the whole place and the whole basement. And he put in a wood stove down there that was like unbelievable because when you got that sucker going, because the whole building is concrete and stone, and the major wall is where the chimney is. So you get that sucker in, and he put a liner all the way up. So instead of losing all the heat, it went up, and that liner energized, spread the heat out into the stone and the rock. So you get a good fire going in that fireplace. It would heat the whole friggin' school up. So the guy did this, and so he has this business that he runs all these. He's an IT guy, and so he brought like microwaves straight into the school, the most amazing, big tube internet, and John has amazing internet. So, um, you know, bottom line was, so the guy gave me, a couple Benjamins, and he moved in because he had to get out of where he was. Right, he just had to. By they were going to like take his stuff and put it on the street. So he came. He loved the place, and he fixed that place up within 4 or 5 days, right? And it was great. And he had his big desk and all his computers and everything. And he loved it. He could do his whole business from there. Didn't have to go down unless he had to go physically touch something. And he was happy as a clam. 2, 3 weeks go by, John comes back, right? And after being in the funny farm, John was kind of, on the meds and kind of, semi normal. And he would sit at the top of the stairs and listen to this guy on the phone do his business. And then he would run down. So you think I own this place? I can kick you out. Blah, 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 blah. And the guy would just ignore him, right? And then one day he did what he did to me. Get out, get out. And by that time I knew this is not going to work. So Mishka's had his mom's house down there, right? And he was, I was taking care of it for Mishka because the guy Mishka had rented it out hadn't paid him any rent, and Mishka didn't even know that he didn't pay him any rent, like for 7 months. And so I just kept going into that house and fixing things and irritating the guy, and he came and tried to kill me, but I knew jujitsu, so I just kept getting out of his way until he realized that John saw him trying to kill me, and the police know about him and knew that he was there and kind of visiting him. I didn't say anything. I could have really sent him away, but I didn't. And so one day I saw him like at the supermarket, like with people all around. I said, buddy, I'm really sorry. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, I'm sorry that, um, you have issues and that you had to leave. And he was just looking at me like, you're apologizing to me? I tried to kill you. And I said, but I understand. And he almost started to cry. So that right there got rid of that. He's not going to try and kill me again. He'll go kill somebody else, but not me, because I'm no longer that villain. Right. But that left the house empty. And I did that so he wouldn't come down and burn the house and Mishka would lose his house. And I moved that guy into Mishka's house, right? Call Mishka up. I got this much better guy. Yeah, I found out that Steve hadn't paid me for the last 7 months and blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, this guy's going to pay for that. What? Yeah, he's a real good guy. He's got his own business. He's down on top. Well, I don't know. I should be there. I should be in control. I should be. I said, Mishka, relax, right? So I did all that for that guy, Mishka, and he comes back, and all he can do is talk smack about you. If you ever see, like I said, if you go and watch the video, it is hilarious. You're so terrible. Right? Okay. Um, and so this other guy moves in that place, loves it because it really is perfect for him. And John Boy ain't there, like sitting on top of the steps going, I'm better than you are. So anyway, he moves in that place and he really fixed again. He does all this, Michigan tried to fix it up. He spent almost 70,000 of money his mom left him in investments she had that she didn't cash in. And he got the worst of the worst. The people just ripped him off. Didn't even fix the roof, didn't do this, didn't do that. The plumbing sucked, but it looked pretty. He had a nice refrigerator. It's like anyway. So this guy comes in, fixes everything, and buys the place from Mishka. And part of the deal is that Mishka can still come back and visit when he wants to. Right. So I called up the other day, and he was there. And I said, don't say anything bad about me. I'm listening to this phone call. I said, buddy, I don't say anything. But if I don't have something good to say about somebody, I don't say anything about it. And so then that guy and I had a nice conversation. And I never, that guy, Mishka, is listening to the conversation. I didn't say, what do you think, Mishka? Or what about that, Mishka? And remember this, Mishka, because Mishka and I had a lot of fun. The first time I met Mishka, um, he hadn't seen his mom in about 2 years, and she's getting old. She's like in her 80s, and she's got every problem you can imagine. And her daughter doesn't really help her out that much. She thinks it's a drag, and But I bumped into her, and I knew um, her from She had come to New York, and I was working for Joe Battle Foundry, and she had Joe the Foundry do some bronze casting for it, and that was my gig. So I got to know Inga and George pretty well for about a month. And George tried to be the groove dude in the art world of New York, and people just kind of just shook their head. But they all loved Inga. And, I was the dude at that time. So we got along great. And I took her places. And George, I'm not going. I'm not. And we had a good time. So, like 40 years later, I go up to visit this guy who's because they built all these little cabins, and that's how they made their living. But after George died, Inga was too sweet. And so all these people, and see, the hill is a very psychoactive place, and where the school is. And this is why Inga was great and everyone else went nuts. So, but see, the hill doesn't understand. It's like a puppy dog. And so oh, look, someone's upset. Oh, look, they're drinking and doing drugs and having sex with lots of different people. Oh, that must be what they want to do. So I'll make it, so everybody who ever went up there became drug addicts and alcoholics and sex fiends. And there were some of the most amazing parties up there. There was a guy up there who was a musician who, like every other night, he had a different woman in the jacuzzi. And 2 or 3 times a year, he'd have a really kick ass party. And the school was like just, 100 yards from that place. And anyway, um, so Inga said, you should go up. And this is after because he brought me down to introduce me to Inga. And I walked into her place and she's sitting at her chair reading a book. She looks up and she goes, "Oh, there you are." And I go, "Yeah, there you are." And we sat down and we just started talking about stuff. And this guy looked at me like, "Oh, wow." And then her daughter shows up and she's like, "Who is this guy?" And she goes, "I told you about him. He was the nice young man who helped me do those bronze in New York City." And she looks at me and she was livid, right? That I had a relationship that this woman never had with her mother. And her mother was the most greatest. This woman, because they lived way up on this mountain, and back in the time when this girl was going to grammar school, the bus couldn't get up the mountain, right? So she was given permission to ride her horse to school. Now, you would think every girl in all of creation in the bourgeois world wants a pony, right? Well, this girl had one and went to school on it. And all the girls, "You have a pony," and she felt embarrassed about it. And Inga would make her because they didn't have a lot of money, but Inga would make her these really beautiful clothes, and it didn't come from Walmart's, So anyway, so that girl had some issues. So so did both their kids had issues because of where they were born, that they traveled around a lot until they found the way they found um, Roanoke was they ended up in New York City, right? And they're being artists and Garrett like in the 50s, and they knew they had to go out of New York. So they were making art and saving every nickel to them. They had these two kids, and so they had a map of America. And every night, George would get drunk and he would throw darts. And whatever dart stuck in, most of them fell off, but whatever stuck in, they put a red pin there. And the place that had the most red pins was Roanoke, Virginia. So they came here, found that property, and went from there. And so it was an amazing place to be, And so I was doing pretty good. My consulting business was great. My electric biz was great. Um, I kept stumbling into great real estate deals. I bought a couple of, you know, um, on 460 between Roanoke and Lynchburg. There are a bunch of little towns. Uh, Bologna, Bedford, a few others, right? And they were like dead. But they had been like Lynchburg was the San Francisco of the East Coast. James River goes through it, and and it's on a mountain. And so they have all the streets are like up, 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 right? And they're all this like 19th century Gilded Age architecture. It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And the railroad went through there, and it was a place where people would take things on the James River and bring it to that was the railroad, and they would take it off the barges and put it on onto the railroad, and railroad would take it either to Chicago or to Philly and D.C. and Boston and New York. Anyway, so it was a great place. And so a buddy of mine bought one end of Main Street, like about 10 buildings for like nothing. And I mean, because he got them at an auction at the city. Nobody was there. Nobody paid the taxes. They decided, let's just get rid of this shit. And he bought half of, I guess that's the south side of Main Street of Lynchburg, right? Like I said, about 20 buildings. He had this what had been the old market building and all these other buildings that were right where the sun hit it, big glass windows, restaurants, stores, nothing going on, right? So, and then he built apartment. He rented because he was a contractor, plumber, and I was an electrician, so I helped him do that, And my boss, he would, I would find lots of work, and he would sign it off. He would, I would pretty much do all the work, and he would get 10-20% do nothing, you know. And the most he did was, he did the paperwork, and he put the materials on the job, right? And he doubled the price of the materials. But anyway, so that was that. And so that was my buddy, and I was staying in one of those things, and somebody rented out and started an alternative medicine school. And this woman who started it, she was one of my students when I taught alternative healing at the Swedish Institute, New York City, near 10th Street. And she goes, "Oh my God," and she would call me sensei, right? And so you know, I did my shtick, and there was a couple of kids who were, getting certified to be massage therapists. That's what that was her school, but she had this alternative thing, and bingo, there I was. So I was doing that. And there was this other guy. Oh, what was his name? Started with a B, but he was a definite Cherokee shaman. I mean, he was right, and he'd gone to Vietnam and was alcoholic and a drug addict and got blown up in Vietnam and nearly died in a motorcycle accident. And after that, he came out the other side, his better self and being, because he had a lot of that in him through his lineage. So he was great. So that woman, him and me, and then the four folks out of her school who really had it in them to be this. This was going to be their life's path, right? So that was great. It was a nice little community, and we started a church and a community center, and it was doing pretty good until Jerry Falwell showed up, and we were heathens. But this guy owned half the thing, and before Jerry showed up, it was another so I was living upstairs in one of his apartments, right? Because I wired everything for him and did a whole bunch of other stuff and got other people to live there. And I was like, the art party ringleader slash party provocateur, or art party provocateur. Uh, no, art party, something like that. So that was a really good time. That was so 99 to I left Roanoke in 2017. So 99 to 2017, I was there. And so first I was in Bedford. I just kind of cruised through Bedford because I was doing this study for the Tavistock Institute about there was real super cult slash alien stuff going on in what they called the Devil Highway. The Devil Highway went from Asheville, North Carolina, all the way up in 1721. That became 26, the Interstate 26, went all the way up to 4081. And you took a right hand turn at Johnson City or Kingsport, and you went up 81 towards Roanoke and Stanton. Stanton, where 66, where it comes from D.C. into West Virginia. Um, there were more murders, right? More disappearances, more like bodies cut up like a jigsaw puzzle and put in sitchins. You know what a sitchin is? Sitchin is. You ever watch Marvel movies? You know, Doctor Strange, right? And he does the those are sitchins. You know, when he turns his hand into this energetic thing and there's these patterns on there, that's a sitchin. You know. And every culture has them. You know, the Jews have the mezuzah that goes by the side of your door, which represents the blood that goes on the door jamb and the lintel there. Anyway, so I was sent to check this out. You know, just me, myself, and I, not a bunch of a crew. And when I would do these things, you know, my skill set as an electrician, I would just kind of cruise into this place that they wanted me to go check out, and I go look around. I go to the closest real electric supply house, not Lowe's, but electric supply house. And because they always have a popcorn machine and a coffee pot, right? And you know, a counter, you know, with seats. So I'd sit on the thing and talk to the guys behind the counter, and we talk electrics and what's going on and what contractors are. And they would give me the 411 on everybody who was doing any kind of real work. And usually within a day, some guy would come in and he's pulling his hair out because, you know, he was a pretty good electrician and they got more and more work. And then he got some jobs that were a little bit out of, you know, like firehouses and hospitals and jails. And they aren't, it's not like running Romex, you know, it's like pipe and, you know, controls and, you know, high voltage and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of know about it. They took the test, but they don't really do it every day. They just wire houses or fix the doorbell or whatever. But now they've got these multi-million-dollar jobs that they got to finish by a date, or the lawyers are coming after them, and they can only, you know, after people working for them is either their daughter's, husband who's a moron, or his wife's cousin who's a moron, or anybody else. It's just morons. There's nobody who can really do the job, and he's too close to them all, right? He can't really um, motivate them, right? So I would see a guy like this pulling his hair out and just crying in his popcorn, and I'd say, "Buddy, what's wrong?" And he'd tell me, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." I said, "I think I can help you." What do you mean? I said, you know, and I'd show them, you know, my little, you know, I would have a little folder of like all my licensing of, you know, master electrician, New York City, IBEW, journeyman, master, um, and you know, at all, right? All the different jobs I had, this place, this place, this place, all these outstanding. Oh man, you should hire this guy. You know, he came and finished the job. He was about to, you know, was about to go broke. Anyway, I had, you know, whenever I did that, I had people write up really good letters, right? So I would just, here, take a look at this. And they would, wow. I said, and this is how it's going to work. So here it is Tuesday, right? So I'm going to go with you. You show me all the jobs, introduce me to everybody, right? I will figure out a strategy to get you on time and on budget. And then I will go around. You go get more work. I will go around and oversee the jobs. Now, I'm not you, you know, so there's no way that they can be, you know, like daddy or, you know, son-in-law or nephew. I have none of this, you know, and I won't be as upset as you. I will be just straight up. Hey, this is what we got to do. This is how it has to be done. I'm not here to bust your chops. I'm here to make you look good and teach you something. And if you want to learn, you're going to be a much better electrician after I leave than when you're here. And if you don't, you're fired. You can't fire me. My name's on the. You're fucking fired. Get the fuck off the job. Especially we were working. This guy had this he was doing 6 jails, right? And half of my little study looking for crazy people, half of them were in the jail. And 4 of the jails, there was 2 new ones they were building, but the other 4 they were enlarging. So we were working where the inmates were there, and I'd have to be working, and there had to be a guard with me because they didn't want them to steal the screwdrivers, you know. Anyway, or so but my real job was to scope out what was going on, right? And because I was getting paid really good from those guys, not Mr. Electric, but he was. So I was okay. So this is how it's going to work. Here it is. Show me around. Introduce me. I'll make a strategy. I'll show it to you. And yeah, there's 4 days left of the week. On Friday, I want $500. I want 5 Benjamins. Right? And if I'm didn't get you out, if I'm not proving my value, I'll only take half. I'll take 250 and say thank you very much and go on my way. And there'll be no records or anything, no complications. You just gave me, you know, 2 Benjamins and a grant, right? So, so by the end of the week, the guy said, "No, no, I want you here. Yeah, it's your. Oh my God!" And I said, "Okay." So that means next week, instead of 5 Benjamins, I want 12 Benjamins. No problem. And then it was usually Friday, and paydays usually were Thursday. So I would go to their shop or their garage, or they all had man caves, to get away from their wife, their kids, the business, right? And I would just talk to them, right? So tell me about your life. What did you really want to do? Because all of these guys, to a man, their father started the business, and yeah, they were in it since they were a little kid, and they were good at it, and all through high school they did great, and then they either got drafted or they had a real passion. This one guy was a great musician, Gus. This was in Ithaca, and he um, when he was 19, instead of picking up the electric job, because his dad was still doing it and he was just be junior. So he basically said, screw it. This is my one time. If I don't do this now, because he was really good. I mean, that's his Ithaca. So he had a band and he was like playing at every gig. And when big bands would come in, he would open for them, and producers and people like, boy, you're good. You should come to, New York, or you should come to LA, or you should come to the place down here. And so at 19, he decided to. He called up, he had a whole bunch of cards. He called up, and this one guy said, um, what my real gig is. So I'm a promoter, right? I get gigs for bands, like Elvis and the Big Bopper and Sunny Valley and whoever, right? Because every time they come in to town, they always need a drummer or another guitarist or somebody like that, because you're going to be my ace in the hole. I'm going to, have you do that, and I'll pay you nicely, and I'll put you up nicely, and and you will find where you're supposed to really go. So Gus said, sure. So he does that for a few months, and he immediately gets a gig with Elvis, and he plays with Elvis, right? And in his man cave, he had about 40 guitars, right? Really Martins, really amazing, and they were all. He had a guitar that John Lennon gave him. He had a guitar that Elvis gave him. Big Bopper gave him. You name it, he played with these people, and he was. He spent 3 years in L.A. at the best time, like in 67, 68, 69, and he was never any place that and he also fell between um, Korea and Vietnam. So they weren't, they were drafting people, but they weren't really desperate for that. So they couldn't find him. He was white, whatever, right? So, you know, because his parents had no idea where the frick he was. He was, because he just left. He didn't say, oh, he just said, I'll be back. He came back 15 years later but with a lot of money, a lot of guitars. And his father was like in his mid to late 60s and said, "Sonny boy, can you please come back? I really need you." And when he heard his father say, "I really need you," he came back because he had done it all. He was already starting to get bored with it all. And he had a big chunk of change. And he had all these guitars and all these memories and all these photos. It was amazing. Like he played with the Beatles at Shea Stadium in New York, like one of the last big concerts. And so he came home and he was a good electrician. So he picked right up on it. And he married his high school sweetheart, who was just a whore, and she was still looking good. And they had a kid, and then another kid, and another kid, and she just became fat and ate bonbons and sat on the couch watching TV, which was fine by him. He went off and did electric work. He still played music. He had a kind of recording studio in his man cave, but nobody went down there. He had a few buddies who were pretty good musicians, and they would go do gigs like in colleges, and so Ithaca, they're two big colleges, so everyone knew him as a great musician and the best electrician, right? So I show up, and they were doing some big, like industrial, like Cargill had a big, gigantic salt mine, which actually was. I don't have the book with me now, but it was a deep underground military base, and it went from Ithaca, New York, all the way to Ohio, and in a straight line was Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And so it like went down the backbone of the what you call it, Appalachian Mountain Range, right? And it's a big salt, and if you build, salt is like concrete. You scoop the salt out, and a geologic thing, you spray the gunite on that, and that's not coming down. So, I said I'd never go underground again, but he paid me ridiculous amounts. And I had two guys who were like teenagers, they were, and I said to Gus, so put me on jobs out of my jobs. I have nothing to do with your boys. And if they screw up, we'll come in and save the day. But otherwise, I don't want to have anything to do with those guys. I mean, they're fair, but they're just, please. But it was like all the time. So I had, so they were doing stuff like, oh, they did all the transmission, and they knew nothing about high voltage. So they would put the pipe in, they would pull the cables, they would set the transformers, and me and my boys would come in and we'd terminate, right? So, and I would come in and I would, Gus and I would figure out how to lay it out. That was what we would do. And then the excavator guy would come and dig the hole and pretty much put the pipe in there. And most of those jobs were PVC, not a big deal. But this one job, they wanted galvanized, and the excavator guy didn't want to do that, So he had his boys do it. So these morons, cut it, with a rigid pipe cutter and pipe threader. And when you cut galvanized pipe, and it's cutting it like, it's not like with a hacksaw, but like, pipe cutter, it leaves this burr on the inside, which there's another machine that you put in there and it grinds the inside, because if not, that burr is like a razor blade. And when you pull wire through it, it will it would scrape the insulation off. And when you put, 100,000 kVA down that wire, and it's dead grounded out to the galvanized thing. Anyway, so these morons did that downtown, and when they turned it on, it just, and these these total dweebs, there was no real disconnect. They had the utility company turn that section off, and they made those connections, and then they got on the phone, turn it back on, and unless and this was coming straight from the powerhouse, so it's like they had to, and it was like so bad that they would have to like turn off, a third of New York State to fix this. And so, this Gus came and got me. He said, "We got to go. Where are we going?" I mean, actually, we were at this cargo mine, and this helicopter lands, and it's a highway patrol helicopter, and Gus, "We got to go." And I said, "Okay, boys, you know what to do. I'm going with them." So we go there, and we fly over, and it's like half the where the pipe was. It's like the ground is like turning red hot, and I said, "So," he goes, "How do we fix this?" And I said, "What about the utility company?" He said, "They don't know what to do." I said, "Hmm." And I said to the highway patrol guy, I said, "So, how you got any sharpshooters?" And he goes, "Huh?" I said, "Sharpshooters." And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "That's really good." And he goes, "Yeah." So let's go get one or two. And so we went to a place. I went while they were getting the sharpshooters. I got the head engineer, and I said, "Okay, so I'm going to get these sharpshooter guys, and we're going to fly in a helicopter, and I want you to tell us what lines to blow out with a gun that will stop this." And he goes, "That's brilliant. Why did I think of that?" I said, "I don't know." And so we did that, and we shot it, and it left the hot wire still on the insulator. That's how good a shot these guys were. And the other thing that was going down, that was like about to burn up half of that county, you know, mellowed out. And so anyway, so Gus and I had quite the reputation. And so he was making more and more money. He really I was, I was going to, I was doing my gig at Cornell. I was doing this, and I was being a volunteer EMT. I mean, I was a busy boy, and I had three different girlfriends who were, the last one was the best. The first two were like real smart ladies, but really neurotic out of the, they were scholastics. It was like, and they would you get really upset with me because, well, what do you? I mean, I said, I got a bunch of degrees, and because they were there when this guy gave me a master's degree just because I was doing this gig for him, and he wanted me to go do the PowerPoint thing, and he knew the people I was going to be, I had to have like a gravitas. So he said, here's a master's degree, and they were like just upset to no end because he gave me a MSW, right, Master in Social Work, and they had PhDs in psychiatry, right, and so they couldn't really do anything except teach. I could do anything, right, and I started getting a lot of gigs that they wanted to do, but they couldn't because they didn't have the credentials, and they was, but yeah, and they said, well, there it is. It's from the head of the guy at Cornell. That's good enough for me. So that's how I lost those two girlfriends, and the third girlfriend, she was very, 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 very sweet and brilliant. When someone's that brilliant, they really don't realize how brilliant they are. And the people in their department were taking advantage of her, et cetera, et cetera. And so I couldn't stand that. And so then I kind of sheltered her a bit and said, listen, these guys are real jerks. And, this ain't the be end and end all. And you already have your PhD. You don't need more of this. So I kind of called up some friends and said, "Hey, I got somebody you should be their mentor, and then you'll get famous for knowing her." Right? So I did, and she actually came up with the cure of cancer. And the cure of cancer has been around many, many, many times. And it's our body is a body electric, and the real deal of dealing with any disease is to basically balance the circuit, and she figured that one out. So she's I have no idea where she is now, but she's probably on another planet. Being because she was so sweet and really so smart. She had a really good diplomatic side to her too. Let's see, what do you guys think here? Whatever happened to the Russian wall? I'll go back to that story. Okay, so I had the dinner, right? And she's like really, she drank the whole bottle of wine, she half of the thing of vodka, and was starting on the cognac. And she was just, oh boy, that meal was great. Here, And so I said, "Why don't you know?" I had these other like little parfait cookies and a really great after thing to settle your tummy kind of liqueur. And I said, "Here, why don't you take this up and I'll clean up and you guys go have fun." So John took her up there, and you know, um, she was horny, so she wanted John to fuck the shit out of her. And John came down around 3 in the morning and said, "She's got hair on her pussy and under her arms, and she smells. I can't do it. I can't take it." I said, "John, what are you talking about? Dude, all she wants to do is smack me." Fuck." I said, "Isn't that what you want? Aren't you horny?" And he was like, just livid about her hair under her armpits and her pussy. And I said, "John," yeah, and he woke me up too. He woke me up, right? I said, "John, let me just go back to sleep. It'll be morning in about 2 or 3 hours. Just go up there, sleep on the couch, do whatever." But anyway, so I go back to I just get back to sleep, and he kicks the door out, and he's hammering his hand, and he goes, "Get out, get out, get out right now!" I said, "John, what are you talking about?" "Oh, I want you to get out of my house. I own this place. It's all mine, mine. Everything in here is mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. I own everything. I own everything." I said, "John, I got all my stuff. I own it. It's in my house. I own it. I own it." And he's got the hammer in the hand, like, "I got it. I own it. I got it." And so I had to get out in 14 minutes, right? So I get out there, and there she is, totally naked, right? And she's wearing the mink coat, and it's like cold, like 20 degrees cold. But she's from Moscow, that's probably spring weather for her. But she's totally naked, and she's wearing this mink coat with the hood, and she's got like 3 cigarettes, right? "I don't know why I came. I have to get out of here." So and I look at her, and she's just about to say, "I want to go with you." And John said, "No, get out, get out." And he was about to start to smash my windows. So I drove down. The sun was coming up. I kind of drove down. I had my wallet, I had my medicines, and I had my canes, and I always have a go bag in my car. So I had some camping gear, and I had a coat, and I wasn't going to freeze to death, and I had about $50 in my pocket, right? And so I rode down the hill. I had a full tank of gas. I went down to the Texas diner, and um, you know I had breakfast there. I had a cheesy western, and I said, "Where can I go?" And I said, "I'm just gonna take two because 220 was right there. So I'm just gonna take 220 into West Virginia." And there's this church in Roanoke that did a lot of service work, and there was this woman who was one of my girlfriends there, and there was a town in West Virginia off of 66, up about 40 miles from the border of Virginia and West Virginia, and it was just where it's getting up into the hills. And it was a town that had been very successful as a coal mine. It's quite a nice little town. And the coal company decided that they were going to do a mountaintop retrieval, just cut up top of the mountain and scoop all the coal up. And by doing that, they went through the coal seam faster than if they had been drilling down underground. And so they had like dug all the stuff that was deep down, and the stuff that was up higher, instead of like trying to drill up, they said, we'll just cut the top off and scoop it all out, right? Which they did. And then once they finished that, that was the end of coal in that town. So they left. But there were other coal mines, so the people still lived in that town. And what happened was, if you're familiar with uh, mountaintop retrievals, is why it's so bad. Is that cut off that thing, you scoop it all out, and then it rains a lot, and that thing gets filled up with water. Where's it going to go? It kind of seeps out the side, and as it does that, more and more seeps out more, and so then the weakest side of where that mountain is, it'll blow out, right? And that like half a billion gallons of water that is like a gigantic swimming pool